Good evening, Professor Smith. This is Dory, and this is the presentation that I didn't get to present due to technical difficulties, and I once again would like to apologize about that. But my research project was basically on the past and present of the ELL system, basically the bilingual system in the education field in our country, and yeah, it was not only about researching the history, but it is also about what's going on now in our education system and how are the teachings going from just showing a perspective of two different levels in the teaching field. So basically, the project started with just the question: how has federal policy for language minority students evolved in the US? And it's basically a timeline, but the timeline started in the 1600s and 1700s when settlements and communities of different nationalities and language groups established their own private and public schools. And then it went on to 1868 with the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the U.S. Constitution that declared that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. So this was a big thing because it basically stated that everyone is equal. And then in the 1960s, public schools in South Florida were overwhelmed by Cubans, and President Eisenhower authorized the immediate transfer of $1 million to the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare for assistance to South Florida. So this basically showed that if the president made a move like sending $1 million to these schools in South Florida, he was basically saying that it was a state of emergency, and this was a case that had to be taken seriously because you have a lot of bilingual students. So this was very important. I sent you the PowerPoint by email, so normally you could be looking at the PowerPoint while I'm doing this presentation. And then it went to the Civil Rights Acts, which is Title 6, that prohibited discrimination on basis of race, color, or national origin in the preparation of all federally assisted programs. Um, and then we had the Bilingual Education Act, Title 7, which was the most important thing out of basically out of all these rules and laws regarding the changes and everything. So, and this Title 7 basically established federal policy for bilingual education for economically disadvantaged language minority students, and it also recognized the unique educational disadvantages faced by non-English speaking students. So all these were very important uh, with the history of ELL and in the education system on how where we're at right now. So it just shows the importance of how things change throughout the country and how they took the bilingual system a little bit more seriously. So now that things were established, there were a lot of questions that were asked. And one of them was basically why teachers need to know about the language as teachers, basically. Like, why do you need to know about the language that you're teaching? It's a very important question. And the book and research just show that Teachers, as communicators, must know enough about the structure of language to speak and write to their students so that they can understand them, and they must be able to understand what the students are saying. This is very important, basically. It just says that a teacher has to know English to teach the language, to communicate the language right, because although a lot of ESL teachers are from different countries because they have the experience on learning the language of English, so it's basically a little easier to teach. I wouldn't say easier to teach, but they have the experience with knowing that what to do to learn the English language. So, but at the same time, they have to know the language to teach it. And then there's the teacher as an educator. Teachers need to know which language problems will resolve themselves and which problems need attention and intervention. Uh, Basically, you have to know the system. You can't just go into the education field teaching English without knowing. You can speak the language, but you have to know when someone is wrong, when they're making a mistake, when they're speaking or when they're writing. You have to know the faults, the defaults, to fix the problem, basically. And also, teachers as evaluators. Teachers frequently make judgments based on the language behaviors of students that have enormous consequences for the students' lives. This is just almost the same thing as an educator. You just got to evaluate the student. You have to know where they're making mistakes, and you have to know what to teach next. And it's just very crucial. It's almost as an educator. Teacher as an educational human being. This is very important, but this is more like as a whole. But what I have here is says basically teachers should understand the role of language in education and know something about the differences between structure of English and that of other languages. It doesn't mean that you have to know fully the language that the student speaks, but you have to know where the student is getting his or her accent from to kind of teach things a little bit properly, because it could definitely um, affect the student that's trying to teach the English language. For example, you have the French language, which a lot of students could probably be using the R a little bit more than other languages. Basically, using the R very like R, like when they speak, and like I know with personal experience when I was learning English, my R would be a little bit stronger than other students in the class, because in French we use it's not technically the R. It's like when you say bonjour and you just it's like a longer R. It's hard to explain, but you have to kind of know, the history of your student to teach them better. Not saying that, if you don't know the language, like a little bit about the language, it might not have too much effect, but it could definitely affect how you're teaching a student, because you don't know why they saying things a certain way. And the last one is basically teachers as agents of socialization. Students from immigrant and minority homes may find the culture of the school vastly different from the culture of their home, and the teacher may be the first contact with the social world outside the home, and even among ELLs, their first contact with English. This is very interesting, because when you're coming from another country, you don't have friends outside of school. Basically, you because this is a new country to you, and a lot of things that you see at school is basically new. So this is very important. I went through the same thing. When I came to this country, I had no friends, so the teacher was my first friend, basically. The teacher, and then from there, and socializing is very important to communication, because you're seeing someone every day. They're asking you just the little things like good morning every day, and it asks you how are you doing, how was yesterday, What did you learn yesterday? Little things like that you can learn. You could pick up your English a lot from these things. So socializing is very good, and definitely having your first way of socializing with a teacher is perfect. Because most teachers I know, all teachers I know were very nice, and they know what to. So it's very important to understand that you're like the face of the English language when it comes to the student. Okay, so next, so basically, I was gonna ask students to pick which one they think is the most effective, as a communicator, as an educator, as an evaluator, as a human being, and with socialization, which one they think is the most important and why. That's what I was gonna ask two students to do with my presentation. And the next question I had was what teachers need to know about the English language. Basically, what to teach. Um, and there's a lot that they teach at the schools today. There's, what I basically found is that phonology is very important, which is the study of sound system and of languages. And an example of a level two phonics lesson is this is just an example of a lesson. This is actually something that I use for my students at work. Is to recognize uppercase. This is a level two lesson basically. So the lesson is to recognize uppercase and lowercase letters. Is practice recognizing letters. So what you do is you provide students with uppercase letter cards, or have the students make their own by writing one uppercase letter on each card. You display the lowercase letter and have students hold up the matching uppercase letter card. And then you just ask them, what is this letter? And they get it right, or they get it wrong, you just keep on going. Then you have the students work in pairs, and one partner says the name of the letter and the other partner holds up the matching card. This is a fun and good way to have students recognizing uppercase and lowercase letters. So that's a level two phonics lesson. Level three, I decided to do reading comprehension. I do a lot of comprehension. I love teaching comprehension because there's so much to learn on comprehension while you're reading. While you're reading a book, there's like a lot to learn about it. So I decided to do for a level three lesson, key ideas and details, basically. And the lesson is very simple. Is explaining key ideas and details. You ask a student a simple question such as, "What did you do after school yesterday?" Or "What did you eat for lunch?" You listen to the answer and then you say, "Now, I will repeat the key ideas and that whoever the student is, Joe or I don't know, and you tell the whole class basically, I will repeat the key ideas and details that Joe just told me." And then you repeat the main point of what he or she said, and then you just make the class do the same thing that I did to Joe. And they'll like doing it. You make them work in pairs, or you make them work in groups of threes or fours. It's a very easy and just proper way to teach and reading comprehension. There's so much to reading comprehension, such as settings, plots, main characters, cause and effect, and problem solving. There's a lot to do with reading comprehension. But other lessons, other things that teachers basically teaches spelling, morphology, which is the study of structure of words, the syntax, the study of rules governing the relationship between words and the ways they are combined to form phrases and sentences. And there's some semantics and pragmatics. Semantics is basically the study of meaning of words, phrases, and sentences. And the pragmatic is basically the study of language in use, that is, how individuals produce and interpret language in social interaction and specific contexts. Okay, and the next part of my presentation would have been let's get asked in a class, how long does it take for ELs to attain proficiency in English? It's a very important question because no one really knows exactly how long it takes for someone to learn the English language. So I would have had the class guess, well, not guess, just give their best answers on this, and we would have just had a discussion. Everyone would have basically said what they thought about about their answers. But there are so many different answers. But I believe is 4 years. I believe the book and a little bit of research that I did says about 4 years to learn the language. Definitely not as fluent that most students pick up, but some of them are very fluent after 4 years. So another stage that was very important is, do younger students learn a second language better and faster than older students? This has a lot to do with actually a question that I asked to you in front of the class. When I said, and then you're the one that actually gave me the answers, which is critical period hypothesis, and it's a very important subject that I really believe in because I went through that same experience actually myself, believing that younger as a younger person, you definitely learn things a little faster than, not faster, but it just sticks to your memory a little bit more than when you're older. It's a little tougher to learn the language when you're older. It's a little tougher to learn a certain sport when you're a certain age. Probably won't apply to golf. Golf is probably the only sport that I would think that wouldn't apply to this. But I feel like at a younger age, when you practice something for such a long time, it just just sticks with you, and you just so basically um the critical period hypothesis, one of the basic arguments that they have is that the students have more motivation at a younger age. When they say motivation, basically they have teachers that are behind them. They're younger, and the teachers are older, so the teachers are basically motivating the students to learn. At an older person is pretty motivated too by teachers, but not as much as a younger student. There's more of a choice when you're older to learn the language. At a young age, you just have to go to school because mom and dad are telling you to go to school, um, which leads to my next point, which is pressure. Younger students have more pressure because they want to socialize with kids that they're spending the whole day with, because when at a younger age you're spending the whole day at school. um, this also leads to the next one, which is needs. They need to speak the language to interact with friends, because if they don't, the only people that they'll be interacting with will be their parents. So it's very important. And also they have the opportunities to reach much greater instructional time because they're learning the language from K to 12, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that's, the last point, it's very important. And with the argument, there's not much, the critical period hypothesis is a very crucial point to this argument. I feel like younger students really do learn the language better than faster and older students. But a few arguments that I found are that um, literate in five language in first language, that this for older students is that they're already literate in one language, and they have knowledge and skills that can readily transfer to a second language, which makes a lot of sense because they already know one language, and they have experience with one language already. So you would think that a second language would be a little easier. To some it works, but to some it definitely is the total opposite. And learning strategies they develop in the first language, basically they use that for the second language. And those are the arguments between the two. But yes, that would have been on the presentation, and I was at the school, but the internet was really going down. So I think I learned a crucial lesson from that. I think I'll start have to figure out a way to come home early for, especially when I have a presentation to make. Other than that, that's the end, and that was my presentation. And thank you.